Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. And today in the studio we have one of my favorite people in the world, Lieutenant Tim Robinson.
Thank you.
Why are you my favorite? Because I love watching Crime Solvers on PAC 14. And you get these other guys who get up there and they're like, oh, we're looking for this guy. And you bring personality into these reports. You'll say stuff like, we've been looking for this guy for 10 years.
Yeah, we're trying to get the folks to realize, hey, it's just fun, and we want people to tune in and watch this at the same time.
But what I can tell from that is that the police officers, and you're with the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office,
Yes.
Is that the officers actually know these criminal people, and they have personalities, they have rapport with them, and there's like not a game of cat and mouse, but there's a relationship there.
There is, and a lot of times we just don't know where these folks are.
Right.
But it's amazing that there is somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows where these people are, and they're willing to call us.
Right.
And the best part about it is they're going to get a cash reward if their information leads to an arrest.
Right. So let's do that. How does Crime Solvers work? I think it's a great thing.
Okay, Crime Solvers has been around since 1987. Now, Crime Solvers, I'm going to get it out there right now, it's not run by the Sheriff's Office.
Right.
It's not run by the City Police. It's actually run by a group of businessmen right here in Salisbury, and businesswomen, who kind of want to remain anonymous and work behind the scenes. What I do is I help run the day-to-day operations. I help manage the program. And I watch, I see the tips as they come in. I help make sure the tips get out to the right law enforcement agencies here on the Lower Shore. I coordinate with the tip center, coordinate getting us ready for our monthly board meetings where we look at information that comes in and help them decide on rewards. The way it works is if somebody sees a wanted person, and it doesn't have to be somebody we profile, we do get tips on people selling drugs on corner, people that they knew were wanted that we didn't profile. Sometimes people are we're guessing and turning in their family members, but they want to do it anonymously so they don't know that their aunt turned them in. The way it works is they call the center and they're given a code. They're given a code number. Once we decide that information panned out and it helped lead to an arrest, and we decide to pay a reward, we give a second half of the code number. So they have to have both of these pieces. And if they have both of these pieces, then they can go and claim. There's a mechanism in place for them to claim a cash reward.
Right. And occasionally, or very often, it does work and it does help.
It does. We've solved everything from locking up people on child support warrants to homicides. So it's a great program, and it gives people an outlet who otherwise might be intimidated or might not want to be known to call the sheriff's office or call the police station or be seen talking to a law enforcement officer, because the phones are answered by a civilian.
Right.
And the mechanism is in place. They don't use caller ID. They've got no idea of knowing where that phone number came from. And we have no way of getting in touch with these people unless they want to willingly come into our office and talk to us.
Now, when I watch The Most Wanted, as someone watching TV, most of the people that are wanted are people who didn't show up for court.
Yes, or they've gotten that bite of the apple where maybe they've been put on probation for something and they've done something to screw it up.
Right.
And then the judge wants to see them again to discuss their screw up or their failures to comply with their gift that they got when they've been put on probation. So they've done something that they've been, and it's amazing. We had somebody just the other day who, not to digress, but one of our deputies pulled over somebody, and not only was she DUI, not only was she suspended and revoked, she also had a bench warrant out because she didn't show up for a driving DUI, suspended and revoked. So this is a never-ending cycle.
Right.
And what happens to some of these people is they'll go and they'll get convicted, and they'll be put on probation, and they've got to comply with these terms of probation, but they'll do something else. They'll get in trouble again. They won't visit their probation agent. They won't pay their fees, or they'll do something as simple as move and not tell anybody where they're at.
What is it in human nature where people won't confront this? Are they afraid of the police, or it's just something in human nature? They won't confront their problems like that.
Maybe they're just not taking it seriously, or they just don't think that this can. It's
But
not my
you
problem.
have guns and handcuffs.
Yes.
I take that seriously.
Yes. It's good.
That scares
it's good.
me.
and I'm glad that people take it seriously, but there's a whole segment of the population that I think seriously lacks responsibility. Whether they weren't taught responsibility or for whatever reason they just don't have it. I'm the kind of person, and I know you are too, because you contact me about this meeting today coming into your studio, but be on time. Be where you're supposed to be at. I can't fathom somebody who says, "Oh, I'm not." They know when they're supposed to meet with their probation agent. They know that they've got a court case, or they should know that if they've been arrested, there's a court case coming up. So it's amazing the volume of people that just simply don't show up to their court cases.
Now, you mentioned responsibility. The police, law enforcement, you all are walking symbols of responsibility.
Yes.
But you're surrounded by people who don't respect what you do and aren't responsible. How do you balance all that?
Well, first off, I want to say I honestly believe that most people in our society love us. They want us here. They respect us. But there are a lot of people that don't. And those are the individuals that sometimes we have the toughest time getting through to, that we have to kind of, maybe guide them a little bit, so to speak.
Interesting. You're also the PIO, the Public Information Officer for the Sheriff's Office.
Yes, I deal with all the media relations.
Right. So all the things that happen, you write it up and you send it to us, which is a great service. Now, in the old days, there was a game of cat and mouse between the police and reporters where things would happen and the police only wanted to tell you what they wanted to tell you. So we used to have to try to hold them accountable. So if someone prominent got arrested, they might not perhaps put the press release or the arrest report in the little bin for us to look at every day. But now
we're going to put it out.
I know you are, but now those resources are gone, and we as reporters really rely on your decision making and in terms of what information you release. How do you decide what you put out there?
We put everything out there, basically.
That's what it seems like.
Because we want to have the reputation of, the sheriff's office first of all has the reputation of being very open with the media, and we also have the philosophy that it's going to get out there. So why not let it get out now?
Right.
Also, a lot of times we find out that the media, sometimes they're already aware of it. They're calling us sometimes before we get it out. And sometimes I've got to tell folks from different media outlets, they'll call us while something's happening. I can't talk right now. We're still working on it. But I do, if I promise them I'm going to get up with them, I do my very best to get back up with them, because our citizens do have the right to know what's going on, and they want to know not only, one, what's going on here in our county, but that we're on top of it,
Right.
and that we're handling it,
Right.
and that on behalf of Sheriff Lewis, that we're going to make this the best place to live on the Eastern Shore.
A lot of attention now on heroin and
Yes.
opiate use. How's that impacting what you all do?
Well, let me tell you this. I've been doing this. I've been wearing a badge for over 20 years now. And heroin, when I first started my career, was something that we heard about. And it seemed like that mystery drug out of the 70s, but we weren't seeing it. It has made a resurgence in our communities that a lot of people, if they're not aware of it, it is here. We first started seeing it around 2010, and every year the numbers have crept up. Right now, for calendar year 2015, I've already plotted it out that if it stays consistent, we are going to double the amount of heroin arrests we made in calendar year 2014.
Well, is it because there's more of it, or you're just focusing on it more?
I think there's more of it. I think there's more people who are using it. There's more people that are trying it, and we're seeing it. We weren't coming across, 20 years ago, we weren't seeing heroin. We were seeing crack cocaine and marijuana. Now, heroin is the drug of choice. It outnumbers all the other drug arrests. For a while, we were making, 2007, 8, 9, that era, we were making prescription drug arrests for people abusing or illegally possessing heavy narcotic pills. What's happened is that faucet has been turned off, which has turned everybody to heroin as a replacement for these heavy narcotic pills, and it's really eaten up our community, unfortunately. And the one thing I want to stress, it's not just in one location in Wycomico County. It's everywhere. You can probably find some person in some community or some neighborhood that's got a heroin issue.
Right. And we think of the classic, the needle and the spoon and all that stuff, but there's more to it than that. There's more ways to consume heroin.
Yes.
So like in pill form
Yes,
or
pill form, and they can also snort it.
okay.
So,
So if you're a user, you might
Mm-hmm.
think you can manage drugs, but then suddenly, if you're putting a needle in your arm, you got a problem.
yes, it's. I used to often wake up and say, "What makes people decide today's a day
Yeah.
I'm going to try heroin?" But a lot of people, it's not that they got to that point where they woke up. It's other drugs, and a lot of them they've got hooked on the prescription pills.
Right.
And once they're on these opioids and they can't get off, and their bodies are so used to it, and they need it, they crave it. When that faucet is turned off, they're turning to heroin.
Right. A lot of talk about marijuana and decriminalizing marijuana,
Okay.
the gateway
Yes,
drug
it's
aspects. What I tell my
yeah.
kids is if you never try a drug, you can't get addicted to
Well,
it.
that's true, and that's another thing about the decriminalization of marijuana. We have seen, of course, more people using marijuana. It is now a citation, and time will tell. But I will whether what the legislature did a couple years ago was good or bad. But I can tell you, we're seeing more of it. And a lot of people they think that stigma is gone, so it can't be that bad.
Right.
But I've got to tell you, right now, our biggest concern, our number one concern, is people now getting behind the wheel, and we're going to start seeing people behind the wheel under the influence of marijuana, just like they're under the influence of alcohol.
Right. And is there a way to test for that?
Yes, there is. We actually have a deputy now who is trained. He's been off to school. He's considered what's called a drug recognition expert, and he's gone through the training. It's a very intense program. It was up in the Baltimore area, and now he's going to come down here. And if one of our deputies pulls over somebody who they suspect to be under the influence of any kind of illegal drugs or narcotics, he will then come in and he will then give a battery of tests and examinations. And I've seen this done. And one of these drug recognition experts, if they're good enough, they can actually predict with certainty what kind of drug that person's under the influence of.
Yeah. I mean, socially, I feel like I know more people driving stoned than drunk.
It's scary
Because they think they can get away with it.
And it's scary. We had just in the past couple of days, we've made 3 DUI arrests, and that's what we catch. That's what we catch. We had an individual who was passed out at a stop sign, and a deputy had to arrest him after finding him passed out at a stop sign. If people knew how common we were making DUI arrests, they'd be afraid to go out at night.
Right.
I don't want to alarm people, but they're out there. And we're out
don't
there.
drink and drive.
And we're out there very diligently because when they go out drinking and driving, so are we.
Yeah.
And we want to take these people off the street very much.
One of the little local controversies, the local newspaper, the Daily Times, isn't printing the DUI log anymore. And I'm actually, when I was the editor of the paper, I'm guilty of bringing back the DUI log because Mothers Against Drunk Driving came to us. They said this is the best deterrent in the community. It's the shame deterrent, putting that out there. And people
I definitely don't disagree with that.
People will be in the bar and they'll think, gosh, I might get my name in the paper. That's the last thing that I need. And I understand why they've done away with it. But do you think that works, that shame factor?
I'm not sure because you got a lot of people that don't care. That's the first aspect.
Right.
And then you got a lot of people that it's not their first rodeo. They've been arrested for DUI before. I work with the state's attorney's office when we get these kind of people. We call them priority DUI. We have 4 coming up in the next couple of weeks that these people are multiple DUI offenders. So when we get these, when I see them come across my desk, that these are multiple DUI offenders, so whether they've had 2 or 3 priors, then we make sure the state attorneys, it's brought to their attention because the punishment is enhanced when that happens. But also getting back to initially, do they think that? No, because many times I don't think they think they're going to be caught.
Right.
I think statistically they say the average person is going to go out and drink and drive 80 times before they're caught.
Wow.
Yes. And there's only so many of us.
Right.
But we're out there, and I still go out personally. It's still one of my favorite things to do as a law enforcement officer is to go out there, look for a drunk driver, and catch one.
Right.
I still get excited. I'm like, yes, I got one. I love it.
Is it the gotcha aspect, or is it the idea that you're helping the community?
Maybe it's a gotcha aspect. I caught a drunk driver, but I feel good.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know people. I've got I work very much with Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Right.
And I help out when they do their quarterly victim impact panels. I try to be there, and I know some of the women, the victims. This one woman, she comes every quarter tells a story about her 13-year-old daughter that was killed about a decade ago.
Wow.
And it's heartbreaking, killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah.
And this woman's very strong, to do something like that. But this also brings me another thing I want to mention about my work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. A little over a year and a half ago, one of the most memorable DUI arrests I ever made was at the Mothers Against Drunk Driving Victim Impact Panel meeting. I had somebody show up there
Oh no.
to the panel meeting who was supposed to be there because he was as part of his conviction for DUI. Who
Okay.
showed up there. Now he wasn't driving, but he had been drinking. Now, first of all, that's an insult to these
Right.
people. But the person who drove him there was DUI.
Wow.
And then they had a cooler in the back seat of the car. They were taking a road trip, There was a road trip to the MAD meeting. So guess what? He got locked up, and because I was able to articulate this guy who drove his buddy there, I
Right.
was able to put it together and piece it together. That there's times that we can charge people with DUI without actually seeing them drive. If we can articulate it and articulate the facts so that a reasonable person would understand that vehicle did not get there on its own.
Right.
I had a court case many years ago that went to trial for DUI arrest, where I arrested a gentleman who was parked, and I saw him get into his vehicle, and then he thought better of it, and the engine was on. He got out of the vehicle and walked back to me. I could tell when he was walking back to me that he was highly inebriated, and I ended up locking him up for DUI because he got behind the wheel.
Right.
I was able to articulate, and where the vehicle was, the judge ruled that the vehicle just did not drop out of the heavens.
Right.
So
That's interesting. I know you're interested in history, love history, and I love history too, and I write that little history column
yes,
in the Salt
I try to read it
Yeah.
whenever I pick it up.
But there was one thing, and I wanted to maybe spin it out into a story about it, but Judge Dallas, who was a district court judge in in the 70s, but this is like 1967, this case, the story was he'd had a full docket that morning of DUIs, and he got so mad after like 6 or 7 of these that he decided he wasn't just going to fine these guys anymore. He's going to start putting them in jail.
Okay.
And it was like a big moment here locally, like, uh-oh, the judge is getting serious about DUIs. But, DUI wasn't that big of a deal not too long ago.
I've heard stories that back in the day, they would not arrest you.
Yeah.
They would probably drive you home. There was no social stigma
Right.
about drinking and driving. I was raised by a police officer, a career police officer, and I don't know. It's quite possible in the age that how many DUI arrests he might have made,
Right.
and I'm still making them regularly. But you're right. There was not a social stigma back in the 60s and 70s.
What is it that makes a person become a police officer?
Well, first of all, I already mentioned it. My father was a law enforcement officer in the D.C. area, and I grew up probably, and somebody actually told me once, they said, ever since you saw your dad's badge and knew what it stood for, you wanted to be one. And every now and then I changed my mind. There was a time, at one point, I wanted to be an accountant. So I realized I'm bad with numbers. Then I wanted to be an astronaut or a pilot. So I realized I'm afraid of heights. But anyway, I've always come back. I always kept coming back to this. And I grew up in the D.C. area, and my dad took me to visit this little campus over 25 years ago, then Salisbury State University. When I was looking for college, I said, this is where I'm going to go. I love this campus. And the longer I stayed here in Salisbury, I fell in love with the area.
That's great.
And I decided this is where I want to raise my family. This is where I want to stay. And as soon as I graduated from the university, I lucked into a job in the town of Delmar. Actually hired me to be a police officer, and I worked there for about 3 years. Chief Harold Saylor,
Yeah, Hal Saylor.
who's just retiring now.
Yeah.
He hired me to be a police officer.
And he's a fun guy. He's got a sense of humor. Yeah.
He's a real fun guy.
Yeah.
It was like work. I had a great time. I learned a lot up there. I'm extremely appreciative that he gave me a shot and hired me and sent me to the police academy. It was a great place to work. The only reason I left there was I wanted a little bit more growth opportunity and a little more career advancement opportunities. So I went down and saw Sheriff Nelms one day, and the rest is history. And he brought me on board, and I've been there ever since. I switched over back in the mid-'90s to the sheriff's office, and here I am.
Now, Sheriff Nelms, old state trooper, your current boss, Sheriff Lewis, another old state trooper, but completely different kind of guy.
Yes.
You want to talk about Mike?
Excitement, energy. I mean, that's
Energy, yeah.
Energy. It's I don't know where he gets all the energy from, but you talk about a guy who motivates you every day to do your best. And the respect he has for our profession, the sheriff has for our profession, and the image that we are to maintain. Just to do our best and look our best and be our best. The slogan is serve, protect, and defend the citizens here of Wicomico County.
He's so dynamic, and he's one of those guys. He's like my dad. Like when he looks at me, it's like he's looking through me, and he can read my mind.
Yes. I think that the citizens here of Wicomico County in 2006, when he decided to run for sheriff, there was nobody that called a candle to him. He won in 2006 easily, and it's obvious because nobody's tried to unseat him.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe he's going to be sheriff for as long as he wants to be sheriff.
Yeah.
He's doing a great job.
My favorite Mike Lewis story, it's a dumb one, as most of my stories are, but I was coming back through Salisbury one day, and I was in that area there by Y Middle on Route 50, and the sheriff's office had somebody pulled over, and it was one of those things like, it was bad because there was like 4 cars, and there was 2 city cars there, so it was 6, and there's all these officers standing around this guy who's sitting on the curb, and and they don't quite have the guns drawn, but they're close, their hands are near where their guns are. And Mike Lewis, the sheriff, is sitting on the curb next to the guy with his arm around the guy, like consoling him. But you could tell he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
And he was in a lot of trouble. And it was like the ultimate good cop, bad cop moment. But Mike was talking to that guy and bonding with him and was going to get him to tell him what was going on.
Oh, if somebody's going to talk, if they're willing to talk, he'll get it out of you.
Yeah.
And he still goes out. He goes out from time to time, and he makes his own stops, and you never know what he's going to stumble across.
Right. Yeah. He made that famous arrest, the gasoline theft from the landfill.
Yes, he did.
He did that on his own too. What can citizens do to help you all?
Obey the law.
First.
But not really. But and again, I want to stress that the vast majority of our community is great people in all aspects. And I've met, one thing I love about working here is just my interaction with the people in this community. Every day I meet great people, and I sense the appreciation from our community every day. But there are segments of the population that don't want to comply. And the best thing that we can do is have our citizens be good witnesses. If they see something, not to be afraid to tell us what's going on. It's very frustrating.
Davis Rourke used to come out with this all the time. The police would build a solid case, and then it come to the court phase, and no one would testify.
And nobody would testify. It's first of all, it's very intimidating, and they don't want to be labeled a snitch, and we see that. But again, that's one of the reasons why that Crime Solvers line is there. It's if I didn't put it out there, it's 410-548-1776. So answer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Somebody's going to answer that phone and take your information. That's one of the reasons we put that mechanism out there. So at least if you have some information, point us in the right direction.
Right.
Point us in the right direction.
Now, when you talk about heroin too, in the police, one of the things I always would think, I'd see people getting arrested or read about it, and I used to think the social part of me would come out, and I'd think, they don't need to arrest these guys. They just need to get them into treatment. They need to do some preventative stuff. But you made a point the other day that getting arrested actually forces that treatment in a way. So there might be a positive that I hadn't thought about.
And it does. I mean, it does trigger a lot of other mechanisms, and a lot of court order stuff will then kick in. But then again, still, the folks need to want to have it inside too. But it does open up a lot more doors once they're arrested and once they get in the system. And, yes, we're taking people in, but if we can clean somebody up and we can get them off drugs and we can make them a productive member of society, that's better.
Right.
I'd rather have that.
Right. How often does that happen, though? I know there's so much.
It does happen. I have worked with the drug court here in Wicomico County too, and there's been some success stories there. There have been some good success stories of people that have been able to kick the habit and become productive members of society. But again, there's our failures in that program too. People again that just don't get with the program. And again, if we can get people off drugs, it's a mental struggle, because once people get addicted to something, and their brain and their body tells them they want it, that takes control.
Right.
No matter how much, willpower they have, it's like, if I want to have, I can't stop myself from eating ice cream at night.
Right.
But that's one addiction.
See, you know my addiction. That's
yeah. So wait, do the ice cream. I get mad. There's no more ice cream left.
I need ice cream.
But these people are reacting like that when they're looking for their heroin.
Yeah.
They can't stop.
Yeah.
They can't stop. And That's almost like when I ask people about an addiction, because everybody's addicted to something, whether it's coffee, whether it's ice cream, something, but there's a lot of good stuff. But there's these bad things. And once it gets in your brain and once it gets in your body that you want it, it's hard to stop. Next thing you know, that's all they're going to focus on. That's it. Getting more heroin. They won't go to work. They won't shave. They won't shower. They won't change their clothes. And one of the interesting things is somebody asked me, what's a heroin addict look like? And it's kind of hard to describe, except that you're going to know when you see a heroin addict. And one of these days, I almost want to make a collage of some of my mugshots from heroin arrest, just so I can almost do that one day when I go to one of these seminars, right, that I give, and I can show you. Here's what heroin addicts look like. A heroin addict looks like a heroin addict, and they'll steal from their grandmother. They'll steal from their grandmother. They don't care. I've seen them stealing from grandparents, and their grandparents, they're the last ones to believe that they're grandkids, and it's really hard. It's very frustrating because I've personally handled some of these cases, and when people have reached out to me directly, I've helped them out, I've handled it, and then they say, well, by the time it comes to court, I don't want anything done.
Yeah.
And then the cycle just continues.
Yeah,
The cycle continues.
The drug moment I witnessed, I was with some police officers in Annapolis, like following the cop around thing. And there was a guy who had bought some crack cocaine from an officer, and they were going to follow him to see if he was like a mule or where he's going to take it to someone else or what he's going to do. And he actually went around the corner. He could not wait till he got home. He found a beer can. He broke it open, and he used the beer can as a crack pipe thing to take this crack cocaine. He couldn't even wait till he got home.
They will go to the first place that they can find that's secluded, and they'll park somewhere. They go behind a building. First opportunity they get. So,
you love history.
Yes.
How did that develop?
Well, it's something that I've always loved. Actually, I can go back to when I was a kid. My grandfather got me involved in reading books about World War II. I've never forgotten the books he gave me, and I've been hooked especially about military history. Yeah, I'm a big buff about that. And
now I can't get my kids into history at all.
I know it's interesting. I've got a daughter who kind of likes it, but my son's more interested in technical stuff. It seems like,
right?
But which is good. Everybody's got their own interests, what they like. But history has been a passion for me. Always has.
That's great.
One of my favorite pastimes is a lot of people see me and they run into me just wandering around Barnes & Noble looking at the books.
That's great.
So that's one of my favorite places to go.
And you teach at SU?
Yes, I do. I teach history at SU.
That's awesome. And last year you did a great lecture on the anniversary of the War of 1812,
Yes.
the Star Spangled Banner.
Yes, and actually its connection to the city of Baltimore.
Okay.
So a lot of people, I was hoping that more people might know, but there's a lot of people that really don't know, even with the new license plate that came out,
right,
that the Star Spangled Banner was written 200 years ago during the bombardment of Baltimore.
Right.
And it was really written on a whim. It was written on a whim by Francis Scott Key.
Right. He was a prisoner on the boat.
Well, he went across to negotiate the release of a prisoner.
Okay.
He was negotiating the release of a prisoner, and he had seen the battle plan, so to speak. He knew what was going to happen, so they basically said, we're going to allow this guy to go free, but you can't go anywhere yet till we're done.
Right.
So when he saw that, we saw the bombardment, and when he got up the next morning, when the dawn's early light, and he saw the American flag flying, and also in the act of defiance, the commander of Fort McHenry put up the largest flag they had available, kind of like a thumb in their nose of the British.
Right.
So when he saw that flying, he says, yes, that our flag was still there. And it inspired him to write the words.
He's an interesting guy. He's Tim Robinson. He's helping keep us safe here in this community, looking out for us, and a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming in, Tim.
This was a blast.
Thank you.
I can't wait to come back.
Thank you. Greg Bassett, Salisbury Independent, another edition of One on One right here on PAC 14.